Nice. Well, thanks everybody for coming this morning, and thank you to all the folks that we'll hear from in a minute that are part of Vermont's food community and food systems community. This is a really, unfortunately, important day to be talking about a really serious and growing problem, which is hunger across the country and hunger in Vermont. We know this is a growing problem in large part because of the high cost of living that we've seen from inflation over the last few years. Everything in everyone's life is costing more, but particularly when you're talking about groceries and food, those costs are making it even harder for Vermonters to make ends meet. I know my mom, who started a food kitchen in Brattleboro, would report on this to me regularly, that they used to see dozens of people on a regular basis, and then it grew to hundreds of people on a regular basis. They started out in Brattleboro serving just 12 people in 1982, and now serve over 45,000 meals a year at St. Bridget's Kitchen. She would also report that a lot of the folks that were coming in were more elderly people that you didn't normally see at food shelves and food kitchens in the last few weeks, that the face of hunger really touches everybody in Vermont. And one of the most effective anti-hunger programs that we have here in Vermont to take advantage of is this 3 Squares Vermont program, SNAP, or what it used to be referred to as food stamps. It's the most effective anti-hunger program. It lifts millions of people out of poverty. It helps students learn better at school to get better school outcomes. That helps them with their job prospects and lifetime earning potential. It improves health outcomes as well for families and for children. And it has immense economic impacts for the state of Vermont as well. $155 million of federal funding gets pulled down every year, and that is spent at over 800 grocers across Vermont, supporting the local economy and having a compounding effect as those dollars are spent locally in Vermont. Over 20% of all the monies that are spent at farmers markets in Vermont comes from 3 Squares Vermont. So it's not only helping our retail grocers, but also helping our farmers here in our state as well. So one of the messages today is that this continues to be a highly effective program, even following these federal changes. We encourage Vermonters who are eligible to sign up and take advantage of SNAP. But we also are going to need the help from Vermonters in the ensuing months and years. We know that, for instance, today, refugees and asylum seekers will no longer be eligible for this critical, important anti-hunger program. When those families and children are not able to access 3 Squares Vermont, it's going to fall on organizations like Capstone, the Vermont Food Bank, to pick up that slack, and they really can't do it by themselves. They need the help of Vermonters who are in a position to provide a donation, Vermonters who are in a position to help volunteer, to help donate food. We need all the help that we can get. Also, we're going to need help from the state of Vermont as well. The administrative costs of administering the SNAP program are going to fall more disproportionately on states going forward. And also, it's going to be a harder program to administer as well, with work eligibility requirements and other eligibility requirements coming into play in the ensuing months and years. So the state of Vermont is going to have to make sure that we have a robust and sustainable system to ensure that everybody that's eligible for SNAP is able to sign up and stay on and get the food that they need for themselves and their families. We know that 85% of the people that take advantage of SNAP are either elderly, disabled, or families with children. So these are folks that we need to continue to make sure get this really important, critical program to fight hunger. And for us to effectively do that, it probably is going to require more resources, but it's certainly going to require more coordination and collaboration between nonprofit providers and the state of Vermont, which is why I'm so excited that we're here today with all of the participants that you're going to hear from in a minute to talk about the importance of this program and the importance of us to invest in it here in Vermont in the years ahead. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Honora Horton, who is the Executive Director of Hunger Free Vermont. Thank you, Honora.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Treasurer Pieciak, and thank you all for being here today. I want to underscore what the Treasurer just said about the importance going forward of collaboration between the state of Vermont, state government, nonprofits like those of us who are here who provide outreach, application assistance, and assistance navigating the complexities of the application process for Three Squares Vermont and other critical programs that support nutrition, lift people out of poverty, and support health and well-being for all of us in Vermont. That is going to be essential. Today, we are marking the beginning of a new federal fiscal year, which sees the changes and cuts to the SNAP program going into effect nationwide. And we also are here today on the first full day of a federal government shutdown, which imperils other programs that people depend on. And I want to underscore that what the federal government is doing right now is they are making policy choices. They are making policy choices that create hunger and illness and human suffering. And here in the state of Vermont, we now have to make our own choice, because we as a state and our state government, we can make policy choices that create food security. We can make policy choices that produce the best possible outcomes in these really challenging times for all of us who live here. And that is what we must do. And that starts with making sure that we are protecting and supporting and uplifting programs like SNAP, Three Squares Vermont here in Vermont, which are the biggest, most effective, most dignified way that we have to make sure that people who are living with low incomes can buy the food that they need to prepare at home for themselves and their families. And so that means that we need to make sure that the additional administrative costs that the federal government is imposing on states, we must pay those. Is it just that the state is being asked to do that? No. But is it essential that our state government appropriate those funds? Yes, because that's going to cost us an additional $8.5 to $9 million in this coming year. But if we keep the SNAP program strong, we leverage $150 million in food and in economic benefit for our communities and our people. So that is math. That is simple math, and we have got to collectively step up and commit to keeping the SNAP program strong. In addition, hunger is going to be on the rise, and it already is. And in order for the people who are no longer going to be eligible for Three Squares Vermont because of the federal policy choices that have been made, to be able to access other resources, we need to make sure that everyone who is still eligible for programs like SNAP is able to stay on those programs. So that's my primary message today for our state leaders. My primary message for all of us, the people here living in Vermont, is that these programs, Three Squares Vermont, is still here. In Vermont, it is still strong. It is still an incredibly valuable resource that we all deserve to use. These are our tax dollars. This is our program, and it is here for every single one of us, and most of us are likely to need it at some point in our lives. So, so use these programs, value SNAP, and proudly own Three Squares Vermont, which is our program here in Vermont. For people who are today being rendered ineligible for this program, for those of us here in Vermont, people in Vermont who are refugees, who are asylees, who are here on humanitarian immigration status, this is a deeply unjust act that is happening to you today. And we also collectively need to make sure that we are coming up with creative and supportive solutions to continue to make food, medical care, and shelter available to all of us here in Vermont who are making Vermont work for everyone. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm John Sales. I'm the CEO at the Vermont Food Bank. First of all, I won't repeat everything that my good friend Honor said, but that's the situation we have. We need to make policy choices in Vermont that are going to create food security for everyone in the state, and we can do that. I'm going to talk about a little bit different, from a different angle. First of all, why are we here with the treasurer? You may be wondering that. Well, Mike has been on the forefront of efforts in Vermont, his time as treasurer, to build financial security for everyone in Vermont. And the bottom line is that financial security is food security. If you go into a grocery store or a country store or go to a farmer's market, there is plenty of food. And the only reason that we have programs like SNAP and that we have hunger in Vermont and everywhere in this country is because families do not have the money that they need to buy the food that they need for themselves and their families. So this is a financial security issue, and I'm really glad that our treasurer is stepping up and talking about this important issue. At the Vermont Food Bank, his mom, St. Bridget's Kitchen, is a partner organization of the Vermont Food Bank, and I visited there and am proud to be a partner also with Capstone here. One of the things when I walked in downstairs, I ran into Joe, and Joe's someone who's on Three Squares Vermont, and he has testified on behalf of Three Squares at the State House. Joe was a truck driver for over 40 years and had some health issues and was no longer able to drive. So now he's on Three Squares Vermont, and because that's not enough, he comes to the food shelf here at Capstone. He had his bags with him to get some fresh produce today and some other stuff. It is people like Joe who have worked hard their whole lives and contributed to our Vermont economy that we cannot leave behind with these changes. As Honor said, there have been policy choices made at the federal level that are, really inflicting cruelty on some of our Vermont neighbors. They're reducing or making it more difficult to get benefits for people who are disabled, for moms of young kids, for veterans who served our country, who now will have to go through a labyrinth of federal and state systems to prove that they qualify for these benefits that they worked for and served our country for. We have an economic system that just basically doesn't pay moms and dads enough money to be able to purchase the food at the store to feed their families. The backstop that we've created, Three Squares Vermont, is now being chopped back. And we can't change that reality today. We can't change the fact that the federal rules have changed. What we can do and what we are doing is making sure that people know that there are folks here in Vermont at Capstone, at St. Bridget's Kitchen, with Hunger Free Vermont, with everyone working for you. So reach out, contact people. If you think you're eligible, you can find ways to sign up. You can look at the vermontfoodhelp.com. You can go to the Food Bank's website, vtfoodbank.org, Hunger Free Vermont's website. Lots of resources. There are people who you can talk to. We all have to work together to make sure we keep all of our Vermont families and our Vermont older adults and individuals fed and happy and contributing to our communities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Calderera. I'm the Executive Director of Capstone Community Action. Yesterday ended our fiscal year here at Capstone, and we broke a record. And this was a record that we did not strive for. This is a record we do not celebrate. What was this record? 1,000,000 At our food shelf, we served 1,500 families and provided nearly 10,000 visits, an all-time high. Please understand, I'm so proud of the work that Capstone does every day to help struggling Vermonters. But this is not a record that I feel good about. In 2021, since 2021, we have had 3 times as many families visiting our food shelf and 2.5 visits, as many visits to the food shelf. So many hungry Vermonters. There is so much need. So who's coming to the food shelf? Who are the faces that we see at our food shelf? 22% are seniors, elders. 43% have a family member that has some kind of a disability. 43%. And of the people that we serve at the food shelf, 57% also use SNAP benefits. It is really clear that SNAP is a crucial safety net for the Vermonters that we are serving here at Capstone. It provides an important buffer during a financial crisis, such as a job loss. And if our food shelf is closed, SNAP helps families afford nutritious food with consistent access to a good and healthy meal. Children in SNAP households learn better. They're ready for school. We do this every day with SNAP and at Capstone's food shelf. In an era of high rents, high energy costs, and high food costs, we are helping struggling Vermont families juggle their bills, keep it all together, and keep a roof over their head. I'll keep it short. SNAP is just truly a lifeline to the Vermonters that we serve, and it helps them make ends meet. We encourage families to apply for SNAP, and Capstone is there to help you, and we are proud to serve you each and every day and keep Vermonters healthy and thriving in a state that we all love. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rowan Sherwood, the Community Relations and Marketing Manager at Hunger Mountain Co-op, and I'm here to bring the perspective of a grocer to the table and also to illuminate the effects that these cuts will have on our local food system in general. Hunger Mountain Co-op offers high-quality, local, and organic specialty foods. And we are known as an access point for alternative foods. People with a variety of health issues rely on us to purchase the items they need to heal and to deal with a variety of health issues and dietary restrictions. Reductions in SNAP benefits will put people at risk for health complications based on their economic ability to pay for the foods that they need. With grocery prices rising in tandem to these cuts to benefits, many Vermonters, up to 14,000 by some estimates, stand to lose access to local, organic, nutritious foods. The co-op, we proudly accept SNAP benefits and WIC to make these things accessible to as many people as we can. Shoppers who use SNAP benefits spent almost $400,000 at the co-op last year, with almost 8,000 transactions. That accounts for 1.3% of our sales. Shoppers using WIC spent almost $35,000 and over 1,300 transactions at the co-op. So we will, as these things are cut, we will feel those impacts. And that is something in itself, but these programs are also qualifiers for our Co-op Cares program. And Co-op Cares is a needs-based discount program that provides 10% off to people who qualify for assistance in one way or another. Participation in SNAP is the most common form of proof offered for Co-op Cares eligibility. Last year, we gave out almost $72,000 in Co-op Cares discounts. totaling 131,000 transactions and affecting 180 shoppers. This program helps to broaden the scope of our customer base, making healthy food accessible to more people. Anecdotally, we have heard from many customers that without this program, they would not be able to shop at the co-op and they would not be able to get the specialty foods that they need for their health. But this also affects the local food system. Almost 40% of the co-op sales are to local vendors, to local farmers and producers. That could amount to over $150,000 not making its way to these folks, these small operations that really rely on places like the co-op to make their livelihood work. And that is money that's spent in our local economy, stays here, and allows our local farmers and producers to thrive. These folks are operating on very thin margins, and a decrease in sales, even a small decrease in sales, disproportionately affects them. A cut in these benefits will not only affect the recipients, but the entire local food economy. So thank you to everyone here for all the work that you're doing, and thank you, Treasurer, for everything that you're bringing to keep this program afloat. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Treasurer Pieciak, and everyone here for making a bit of space to talk about the impact of the end of SNAP benefits on refugees and immigrants in Vermont. I am not a refugee. I'm not from Afghanistan. I work as the head of the Vermont Afghan Alliance, and I'm a deeply strong believer of the saying, "Nothing about us without us." But in asking staff, Afghan staff who serve many of the 650 Afghans who now live in Vermont, whether they wanted to come today, they continue to express fear to speak out about things that are impacting our communities because they're also they hold refugee status, pending asylum status, and special immigrant visa status. So I'm going to do my best to share with you what I see and also what they've shared with me, and to give voice to the experience of the community. I also want to note that while the Vermont Afghan Alliance helps with employment, housing, immigration legal services, also helps with new arrivals, we're just one organization in an incredible patchwork of organizations across the state. There's the Central Vermont Refugee Action Network here in Montpelier, who's serving a number of Afghan families. There's USCRI, ECDC in Southern Vermont. We're sort of like alphabet soup, but we're all coming together in this big patchwork to serve the community. As you probably know, there are about 650 Afghans in Vermont today. That's the largest population of Afghans in the nation per capita. Before discussing the impact, and I have a couple of very specific stories for you, I did want to recognize or give some clarity to a legal policy issue that has come up that makes things a little bit more complicated. So I hope you'll bear with me while I try to explain that in the best way possible. So the One Big Beautiful Bill Act did, of course, take away SNAP benefits for some immigrants and refugees, but really that decision and the guidance around that decision was left to state by state, to review the law and come up with how they were going to implement the policy and what guidance they would give here in Vermont. Today, as I was driving here, I did receive calls from national partners saying, well, Vermont's doing it this way, but the rest of the country isn't doing it that way, or our state isn't doing that way. And what we have are Afghans this morning hearing that colleagues and friends in other states are not losing their benefits yet. Here in Vermont, that is happening. So that's complex. I'm not here to explain the state of Vermont's decision, of course, but each state is left to its own determinations, and Vermont has made one, and that certainly has consequences, and every state has to figure out their own level of risk. But just know that that's happening. So what do we know today? We know that, and I wrote this down because I want to be very, very clear, residents in the United States who are also citizens or nationals will not generally lose their SNAP benefits unless they meet a certain additional qualification. But it's aliens lawfully admitted for permanent resident status, which the Immigration and Nationality Act defines. This may include refugees who have been here for more than 5 years or under 5 years, asylees who have been here for under 5 years, and special immigrant visa holders. Other states are saying, well, these individuals, upon entering the United States, are on the fast track to getting a green card, and therefore they should continue to keep their benefits. So, what does that mean for a conversation here? It's just information. I just want to share that with you because we're navigating that as an organization where there's this patchwork of implementation that's going to be different from state to state for now. For the purposes of this conversation, it doesn't really matter because this morning people are going to lose their SNAP benefits. And I want to tell you who these individuals are. Since January, when the Trump administration dismantled the U.S. refugee admissions program, we stepped up and said, the Vermont Afghan Alliance, we're going to continue to welcome Afghans, special immigrant visa holders, people who work directly with the U.S. government, and the administration has said, you can still come to the United States. Today, they lose their SNAP benefits. These are individuals who just arrived 2 weeks ago. We're working tirelessly to get them jobs, into housing within 2 months. They are highly qualified and eager to work. But SNAP for that 2-month period is extremely important. It's not a lot, it's a little. It's the bare minimum to build financial security. So this morning we're trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to help these individuals? And then the 25 people that we're gearing up to still welcome, what's going to be the stopgap measure? And I'm looking at our dear friends at Hunger Free Vermont and the Vermont Food Bank and others. We're all going to come together to figure that out, but it's going to take every Vermonter chipping in and stepping up right now to help fill that gap. But there's another gap that I am deeply, deeply concerned about, and that is, I'll say it, oftentimes mothers, larger Afghan families who are here on their own with children. And they're not looking for a handout, they're already working second shift just to be able to feed their kids and to give their kids the best opportunity at success here in the United States. And they're losing their SNAP benefits. And that means this morning we're thinking, okay, who else in the family can go to work? Who is of working age? And that means that kids are going to lose opportunities in high school and after school programming. The impact is really harsh. It is deeply, deeply inhumane. And all we can do now, despite these confusions in the guidance, is come together, figure out how we can raise more money, get more food, and try to get it to those who are most vulnerable. I wanted to close, though, with, and I'm sorry I'm going a little bit on here, but I wanted to close with a really important statistic that we just found out last week. Afghans in the United States, since arriving in 2021, have contributed $1.97 billion in local, state, and federal taxes, contributing to Social Security and Medicare. That is far more than this community has accepted from the federal government in support. So the impact is so significant, which is why this decision is just so extremely harsh. And these are individuals who are making the decision to rebuild their lives, to grow our workforce, to support our economy. And I hope that Vermonters will join Treasurer Pieciak and everyone here today in chipping in and just saying we can control this here in Vermont come what may in Washington. Thank you.
Thanks, Molly. Well, thank you, Molly, and thank you, everybody. We're happy to take some questions if folks have them.
Yeah, I guess how difficult has it been, of course, as individuals and families that maybe don't understand or can grasp everything that's happening in real time. So how difficult has that been, along with all the changes happening so fast?
I mean, I'll say just things are really fresh today. So as you may have heard, the internet was cut in Afghanistan for the last 3 days. So not only are individuals losing all contact with family members, but then to receive these letters in the mail that say that SNAP benefits will be ended. The United States made most Afghans refugees. And then to have the government that is supposed to be welcoming you and helping you succeed also remove this itty bitty bit of support that is so helpful is just really heartbreaking, and it gives people a lot of sadness, but also legitimate fear about how they're going to feed their children, pay for utilities. LIHEAP, we also know, is on the chopping block, and afford rent.
I would just add that, what Molly just talked about, the Afghan and other asylees and refugees here, this is the really immediate impact right now today. People who get SNAP benefits, Three Squares Vermont, and maybe have work reporting requirements that are going into effect, but they don't have to do anything today. It really is this kind of slow roll. So the state of Vermont has actually used some discretionary powers that they have to keep people from needing to use these work reporting requirements until, was it February 26th?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they won't have to report until February 26th. But it's going to be a process until then. We really want people to reach out to Hunger Free Vermont, to the Vermont Food Bank, to their local food shelf. Community action agencies are great resources to understand how we can help them remain on Three Squares Vermont.
I had a couple of questions. Firstly, given where we are this morning, having spoken with Economic Services Division last week, and heard that they are still very much in continuous communication with folks at the USDA about figuring out the last pieces of this implementation. I heard very clearly that not all of their questions had been answered. So I'm wondering if a lot of those folks are now furloughed, whether those communications will still be able to happen, and what parts of the implementation of continuing Three Squares Vermont and the state are now at risk because of that. And then separately, I've heard a lot about how the state will sort of need to chip in itself to sort of start filling these gaps. And I'm wondering what maybe yourself, Treasurer Pieciak, or folks from local providers are thinking about what the state's priorities should be there beyond maybe these added administrative costs.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think on your first question, I think it's important to note that, with the government shutdown, oftentimes state agencies will pull down all the money that they can in advance of the shutdown, and that was the instruction that was sent out this time as well. And particularly with SNAP payments, those get transferred into the vendors, prior to the start of the month. So in the short term, those that are on SNAP should continue to go with their benefits uninterrupted, but it all is a matter of how long the shutdown lasts for. There are contingency plans in place with USDA, but there's only so much funding there in those contingency plans. The longer the shutdown goes on, the more it could impact the actual people that are part of the program. The other part of that is the administrative piece, which you point out. And if somebody is needing to change their status or get signed up, or the state of Vermont is trying to reach out to get information, I think that is going to be quite challenging during the shutdown in terms of having constant communication and getting quick decision making. So that will be an impediment that we'll see, unfortunately. To your point about how does the state step up, I think on the administrative piece, it's a very straightforward answer. This is a burden that's being shifted onto the states. If the state doesn't pick it up, people are going to go hungry. They're not going to be able to pull down this federal money. So it really is a moral question, but it's also an economic question. The more that we can ensure that those that are eligible are pulling down federal benefits, that's helping them, it's helping their families, it's helping all the retail grocers, it's helping the economy. So I think that is a really important investment for the state to make. In terms of those resources beyond that, there are other things that have to be contended with as well, including Medicaid cuts. So I think it has to be viewed in the totality of all of those impacts. But I think the administrative piece, is a pretty straightforward, good investment for the individuals and for the economy as well. I'll let anybody else answer that wants to add to that.
So government shutdowns have become a very regular occurrence, unfortunately, in our political system, and they always cause a lot of challenges for state agencies and organizations like most of our organizations that are here who work with the state to conduct outreach and application assistance for the Three Squares Vermont program here in Vermont. And at the same time, fortunately, we do have a very strong network and a very strong system for that outreach and application assistance in place here in Vermont. So although the government shutdown is happening, and although it is now going to be impossible for state agencies to get the answers that they are seeking from USDA about the implementation of all of these new cuts and restrictions, at the same time, application processing here in Vermont will continue as usual. So, and look, this is confusing. It is deliberately meant to confuse us all and have us give up on government and stop applying for the benefits that we're entitled for. Don't do that, okay? These are our benefits and help is available. So if you are confused, you are not alone. It is confusing, but there are so many people in Vermont who are highly trained and ready to make things clear and help you through the process. So go ahead and apply for Three Squares Vermont, and you can find out who around you can help by going to vermontfoodhelp.com or calling 211 toll-free anywhere in the state, or reaching out. Capstone provides application assistance. Vermont Food Bank has a team providing application assistance. So there are resources available to you, and you can navigate these new bureaucratic requirements. You can get through. There are ways to get exemptions from these work reporting requirements that are new, and you don't have to do it alone. We are all here to support one another through this process.
So I just wanted to bring up a point about LIHEAP, and then a question as well about the application process. So I think more concerning right this moment in time, because of the season that we're in, is the heat assistance that folks are going to be looking to apply for in just a month. And fortunately, we've had some great weather, so people aren't really thinking about it right now, but they will be thinking about it in a couple of weeks. And the good news is that LIHEAP was increased in the federal budget, but the bad news is there isn't a federal budget right now, and we're in a shutdown, and they fired the people who are supposed to be administering LIHEAP. So, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see people, the one thing that they do have discretion over is their food, right? Because they can come to a place like Capstone to get their food because they need to save their money for their heat, because they may not get a fuel assistance right away. So one question that I have is that I'm trying to navigate this, because you're right, it is really confusing, and the rules, there's a lot of new rules, is so the application for Three Squares as well is the same application for your fuel assistance. But there's some new provision about basically excluding elderly and disabled, that now their electrical, like what they pay for heat is going to be factored, or what they pay for utilities is going to be factored into what they become eligible for LIHEAP or for Three Squares. I think it's for Three Squares.
It's the standard utility allowance.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay. Yeah. There are changes to the standard utility.
Yeah.
Basically meaning their benefit is probably going to be less because of that, or I don't understand.
I will do my best. Okay, here we go. So this has nothing to do with LIHEAP, though. Like, it does, like the heat, that funding that you're talking about. So inside of the SNAP application, you report different expenses that you have that are allowable, that let you net your income down. And the more you're able to net your income down, the more food benefits you can receive. So there's a change that is happening to the way that utility costs electricity, heat, those kinds of expenses get calculated. But for people who are over age 60 or people who have a disability, that this is not going to change. So their heating allowance, their SNAP benefit will not be affected. They will continue to have the same, what's called a standard utility allowance that they have, and it will continue the same way. This, however, will change for people who are not in either of those categories. So if you're younger than age 60 and you don't have a designated disability, you will now, rather than getting the standard utility allowance here in Vermont, you will have to actually report your utility costs that you pay for utilities. So you will have to communicate that you pay for your utilities to on the application or in your interview for Three Squares Vermont benefits. So this is another bureaucratic hurdle, and it could impact and reduce your benefits. So for some people, it will lead to a reduction in food benefits. For many people, it will not, as long as they go through this additional bureaucratic hurdle. And again, this is where seeking assistance with the application can be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
I wondered if anyone has, like a clear timeline on like WIC benefits and where those will be in the next like month. I know folks should be okay for October with like actual Three Squares VT, standard EBT stuff, but
In relation to the government shutdown?
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that falls into the great bucket of uncertainty.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good line, great book.
Sorry, Molly, I also wondered if you've been in touch with the ESD folks about the refugee implementation stuff?
I've been in regular contact with the governor's office, just sharing different interpretations of the application of the law to special immigrant visa holders who get their green card upon arrival in the United States, and then also in regular contact with Tracy Dolan's office. The state is definitely trying to come up with some stopgap measures to provide a little bit of additional assistance for a longer period of time, but it's unclear what that will look like as of this morning.
Well, great. Well, we appreciate everyone coming today. We're sticking around here for a little bit if you have some additional questions, but appreciate, the media gathered here. Appreciate everyone that participated in the press conference on this important topic. Again, really impactful for Vermont families, impactful for our economy, and everything we can do to make it robust and sustainable will be really important. So thanks again. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, great.